At 18, my parents threw me into the rain and said my brother deserved a future more than I did. 5 years later, he walked into my office begging for a job, with no idea that I would be the one deciding whether he was qualified. I'm Everett. I'm 23 years old, and 5 years ago, my father looked me in the eye and told me I was the necessary sacrifice for my family's success. Before I tell you how I ended up sitting across from my brother in a boardroom that costs more than my parents' entire house, holding his fate in my hands, I need to know something. I need to know if I'm alone in this. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from right now. Are you in your car? Your living room? Just drop your state or country below. It helps me to know that real people are hearing this. It was raining in Seattle the day the circle finally closed. It's always raining here, it seems. I was standing in my office on the 42nd floor, looking down at the gray streets. My reflection in the glass didn't look like the boy from Bloomington anymore. The suit was tailored Italian wool. The watch on my wrist was worth a mid-sized sedan. Down in the private garage, my Porsche Panamera Turbo S, a car I bought in cash, sat waiting for me. It was gray, metallic like a shark. But up here in the quiet, none of that mattered. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Dahlia, my head of HR, had buzzed me 5 minutes ago. "He's here, Mr. Whitlock. He's in the waiting room." I had told her to make him wait. That's a power move, right? That's what CEOs do. But I wasn't making him wait to be cruel. I was making him wait because I couldn't breathe. To understand why a grown man, a CEO of a fast-growing logistics consultancy called North Star Flow Systems, was trembling at the thought of an entry-level interview, you have to go back. You have to go back 5 years. You have to go back to a dinner table in Indiana that smelled like roast chicken and betrayal. I was 18. It was a Tuesday. In the Whitlock household, Tuesday was roast chicken night. My mother, Celeste, was a creature of habit. She believed that if the table looked perfect, if the napkins were folded and the water glasses were full, then the family was perfect. She was wrong. Our family was a business and I was the bad investment. My brother, Preston, was 3 years older than me. He was the golden boy, the star quarterback in high school, the debate team captain, the one with the smile that made neighbors stop and say, "That boy is going places." And he was finishing his undergrad and getting ready for law school. I was different. I was quiet. I liked taking things apart. Toasters, radios, engines. I didn't talk much because nobody really listened. I sat at the end of the table, usually on a folding chair if we had guests. But even when it was just us, I felt like I was sitting in a different zip code. That night, I had a letter in my pocket. It was burning a hole in my jeans. I had rushed to the mailbox before my dad got home. I knew what it was by the return address. Indiana State University. Systems Engineering. I waited until Dad, Harlan, had finished his first serving of potatoes. He was a big man, a former teacher who ran a struggling auto repair shop. He had grease permanently etched into his knuckles, a symbol of how hard he worked. He loved to talk about sweat equity. "Dad," I said. My voice cracked. I hated that. "Mom." Preston was busy scrolling on his phone, ignoring us. "I got something today," I said, pulling the envelope out. "I got into state, the engineering program." I put the letter on the table. It was the proudest moment of my life. I had a partial scholarship, but I still needed help. I had calculated it. With a part-time job and a little help from the family college fund that they had talked about for years, I could do it. Dad stopped chewing. He didn't pick up the letter. He just looked at it like it was a bill he couldn't pay. Mom put her fork down. She looked at Dad, then at me, then down at her plate. That was Mom. She saw everything and said nothing. "Engineering," Dad said, the word heavy in his mouth. "That's good, Everett. It's a good school." "I got a partial scholarship," I said, leaning forward. "It covers tuition for the first year, but I'll need help with room and board, and the rest of the fees." I did the math. "If we use the fund." Dad cut me off. He wiped his mouth with a napkin, a slow, deliberate motion that made my stomach turn. "There is no fund, Everett." The room went silent. The only sound was the rain hitting the window. "What?" I asked. The college fund, Dad said, his voice flat, matter of fact. It's allocated. Preston got into Georgetown Law. Do you have any idea what that costs? I looked at Preston. He finally looked up from his phone. He didn't look surprised. He looked bored. But, I stammered. But that fund was for both of us. You said. Plans change, Dad said. He took a sip of water. We have to be realistic. Preston is going to be a lawyer. That's a career. That's a future. He's going to lift this family up. We need to invest where the return is guaranteed. Invest. Return. He was talking about his sons like we were stocks. Preston was Apple. I was a penny stock crashing in the market. So I get nothing? I asked. The anger was starting to rise, hot and sharp. We can't pay for 2 tuitions, Mom whispered. She still wouldn't look at me. We just can't, Everett. Your brother. His potential is just greater. I finished for her. Dad slammed his hand on the table. The silverware jumped. Don't you take that tone with your mother. You should be happy for your brother. He's going to do great things. You can work at the shop. You can take classes at community college in a few years. You're young. You can wait. I don't want to work at the shop. I stood up. I want to go to school. I earned this. I worked my tail off for those grades. And who put the roof over your head while you studied? Dad stood up too. He was taller than me then. Intimidating. Who paid for the food in your belly? You are ungrateful. I'm not ungrateful. I'm asking for fair treatment. I shouted. You've never even asked what I want. It's always Preston. Preston's car. Preston's clothes. Preston's future. Because he deserves it. Dad roared. The truth finally came out. It hung in the air, ugly and naked. He deserves the future, Everett. You're adequate. But we don't bet the farm on adequate. I looked at Preston. Are you going to let him do this? You know this isn't right. Preston shrugged. He actually shrugged. It's law school, Everett. It's a big deal. Don't be selfish. Selfish. Something inside me snapped. I didn't scream. I just looked at them. If I'm not worth investing in, then I guess I'm not worth feeding either. If you don't like the rules, Dad pointed to the door, you can leave. Tonight. You want to be a man? Go be a man. Go see how far fair gets you in the real world. He was bluffing. He had to be. Parents don't kick their kids out for getting into college. Fine, I said. I walked to my room. I packed a duffel bag. A few shirts, jeans, my laptop, the letter from Indiana State. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely zip the bag. I kept waiting for the door to open. I kept waiting for Mom to come in and say, "Stop. This is crazy." Nobody came. I walked back out to the living room. Dad was sitting in his recliner watching the news. Mom was in the kitchen, aggressively scrubbing a pot. Preston was gone. Probably in his room, texting his girlfriend about his acceptance letter. I'm leaving, I said. Dad didn't look away from the TV. Leave the key on the table. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I put my house key on the side table. It made a small metal clink. That sound haunts me. It was the sound of my childhood ending. I opened the front door. The rain was coming down in sheets now. A real Indiana storm. Everett. Mom's voice. I turned around, hope flaring up in my chest. She was standing there, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her eyes were red. She walked over to me, but she didn't hug me. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a bill. A $20 bill. Wrinkled. Worn. She shoved it into my hand. Be independent, she whispered. Prove him wrong. She wasn't giving me money to survive. She was paying me to go away so she didn't have to deal with the conflict. She was buying her peace of mind for $20. That's it. I looked at the bill. That's what I'm worth? She stepped back and closed the door. I stood on the porch. The porch light flickered and died, leaving me in the dark. I looked at the window to the living room. I saw Preston standing there, holding the curtain back. He was watching me. I waited for him to wave. To mouth, I'm sorry. To do anything. He just let the curtain fall back into place. I walked down the driveway, the rain soaking through my hoodie in seconds. I had no car, no plan, $20 in my pocket, and a family that had just fired me from their lives. The first hour wasn't bad. Adrenaline is a powerful drug. I walked with purpose, fueled by anger. I'll show them, I thought. I'll become a millionaire. I'll come back and buy the whole town. But adrenaline fades. The cold does not. Bloomington at night, in the rain, is a different planet than the one you see from a car window. The sidewalks were slick. The streetlights reflected on the puddles like oil. By the time I reached the bus station downtown, my shoes were squishing with every step. The station was closed. The metal grate was pulled down. I sat on the bench under the small overhang. It offered almost no protection from the wind. I checked my phone. 14% battery. No messages. I took out the $20 bill Mom had given me. It was soaked. I tried to flatten it out on my knee, but it just tore a little at the corner. I stared at Andrew Jackson's face. He looked miserable. "Okay," I said to the empty street. "Okay." I didn't sleep that night. I shivered. A deep, bone-rattling shiver that starts in your spine and makes your teeth clack together. Every time a car drove by, I looked up, hoping it was Dad's truck, hoping he'd cool down and come to get me. No truck came. Day 2 was a blur of humiliation. I tried to buy a sandwich at a gas station. The clerk looked at my wet, torn $20 bill and shook his head. "Can't take that, kid. Machine won't read it." "It's legal tender," I argued, my voice raspy. "It's trash," he said. "Buy something or get out." I walked out. I drank water from a bathroom sink in a public park. I ate half a bag of stale chips I found on a bench. I slept behind a dumpster near a loading dock because the heat from the building vents blew out there. By the third night, the anger was gone. The fear was gone. There was only the fever. I had caught something. Pneumonia, probably. My chest felt like it was filled with broken glass. Every breath was a struggle. I was walking down a service road near the highway, trying to find a place where the wind wasn't cutting through me. I stumbled. My knees hit the gravel. I didn't have the strength to get up. I lay there, cheek against the wet asphalt. The rain felt warmer now. That was a bad sign. I knew that much from biology class. Hypothermia makes you feel warm before you die. I closed my eyes. I thought about the roast chicken. I thought about the way the house smelled like lemon cleaner. So this is it, I thought. Dad was right. I'm not realistic. Then a sound. Not thunder. The hiss of air brakes. Lights flooded over me, blindingly white. A massive semi-truck had pulled over onto the shoulder. I heard a door slam, heavy boots crunching on gravel. "Hey!" A voice, rough like sandpaper. "Kid, you alive?" I tried to speak, but all that came out was a wheeze. Strong hands grabbed my shoulders. A face appeared above me. An older man, beard gray as steel, eyes hidden under a baseball cap. He smelled like diesel and stale coffee. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask where my parents were. He put a hand on my forehead and swore, "You're burning up. Come on." He lifted me. I was dead weight, but he carried me like a sack of flour. He threw me into the passenger seat of his cab. The heat blasted me instantly. It hurt, actually. The thaw was painful. "Drink this." He handed me a thermos. It was warm tea, sugary and strong. I don't have money," I whispered. "I have a ripped 20. The man laughed. It was a dry, barking sound. "Did I ask for a fare?" He drove. I drifted in and out of consciousness. I learned his name was Cormac. He drove long haul for a freight company. He talked to keep me awake. "You don't sleep, kid. You sleep, you don't wake up. Listen to me. My transmission is acting up on third gear. You know anything about transmissions?" Synchronizers," I mumbled. "Worn out." "Yeah, maybe." He pulled into an urgent care center 2 towns over. He carried me in. The nurses rushed over. "Found him on the side of Interstate 69, Cormac told them. "Fix him." I remember the needle in my arm. I remember the warmth of the blankets. And then darkness. When I woke up, the room was white, beeping machines. I looked at my wrist. There was a plastic bracelet. It didn't have my name. It read, "Unknown Male." I stared at it. I wasn't Everett Whitlock anymore. I wasn't a son. I wasn't a brother. I was nobody, just a body found on the road. A nurse walked in. She smiled when she saw I was awake. "You're a lucky young man," she said. "Your friend left. Cormac. He had a delivery schedule. He said he couldn't wait." She reached into her pocket. "He left this for you. And this jacket." She placed a heavy, flannel-lined denim jacket on the chair. And on the bedside table, she placed a crisp, new $20 bill. "He said to tell you." The nurse hesitated. Her eyes got a little misty. "He said to tell you that you need it more than his son does." "His son? His son died 10 years ago," she said softly. "Runaway. Overdose. He never found him in time. He told me finding you. It was like a second chance he never got." I picked up the $20. I squeezed it until my knuckles turned white. I looked at the unknown male bracelet. I grabbed a pair of scissors from the tray next to the bed and cut it off. I wasn't going to be unknown. I wasn't going to be a ghost that haunted a truck driver. I put on Cormac's jacket. It was too big, but it felt like armor. "Where do I go?" I asked the nurse. "I have nowhere." She wrote down an address. "Haven House. It's a shelter. Ask for Mrs. Norcross. Tell her I sent you. But listen to me." She leaned in. "They kick you out at 8 in the morning every day. You have to hustle. Can you hustle?" I thought about Dad calling me adequate. I thought about Preston watching from the window. "Yes," I said. "I can hustle." Haven House smelled like bleach and boiled cabbage. It was a concrete building on the edge of the industrial district. Mrs. Norcross was a woman shaped like a fire hydrant, short and solid, with eyes that could spot a lie from across the room. "Rule 1, she said, tapping a clipboard. "Curfew is 9 in the evening. Door locks. You're out, you're out. Rule 2, no drugs, no booze. Rule 3, you get 1 bed, 1 locker. You keep it clean. This isn't a hotel, and I'm not your maid." "Understood," I said. "You've got 30 days, she added. "After that, you need to show proof of employment or you lose the bed. We have a wait list." 30 days. I started walking. I went to every shop, every garage, every fast food joint within walking distance. I didn't have a resume. I didn't have a phone number. I just had Cormac's jacket and a desperate look in my eyes. "No experience. We're not hiring. You look like trouble, kid." Day 4. Day 5. My money was running out. I was buying dollar loaves of bread and eating them plain. On day 6, I walked into Rosalie's diner. It was a small, greasy spoon with cracked vinyl seats. It was lunchtime and the place was chaos. Dishes were piling up. Customers were yelling for coffee. A woman, Rosalie, was shouting orders in Spanish and English, looking like she was about to explode. I didn't ask for a job. I saw a tray of dirty dishes on a table that had been sitting there since I walked in. I picked it up. I walked behind the counter, past a stunned waitress, and into the kitchen. I found the sink. I started scrubbing. Rosalie came in 5 minutes later holding a frying pan. "Hey, who are you? What are you doing?" "You're behind," I said, not stopping. "I'm catching you up." She looked at the stack of clean plates I'd already dried. She looked at the sink. She looked at me. "I can't pay you under the table," she said. "If I last the week," I said, repeating a line I'd heard in a movie once. "You put me on the payroll. If I suck, you kick me out." She squinted at me. $5 an hour plus tips from the bus tub. Apron is on the hook. I worked like a machine. I didn't just wash dishes. My brain, the engineering brain my father thought was useless, started seeing patterns. The waitresses were crossing paths too often. The silverware was stored too far from the drying rack, adding 10 seconds to every cycle. The prep cook was walking across the kitchen to get spices that should be at his station. I stayed late that night. "Go home, kid," Rosalie said, counting the register. "Can I move the dry storage?" I asked. What? If we move the dry goods to the shelf near the fridge, the cooks won't have to cross the line. You'll save about 4 minutes per order during rush hour. Rosalie laughed. You're a dishwasher, not Gordon Ramsay. Let me try. She let me. The next day, lunch service went smoother. Tickets weren't backing up. The food came out hot. Rosalie gave me a raise to $7 an hour. It wasn't much, but it was a salary. It was survival. For 6 months, that was my life. Shelter at night, diner by day. I saved every penny. I bought a cheap prepaid phone. I bought a suit from Goodwill. I kept my head down. But I was hungry for more than food. One afternoon, a man in a sharp gray suit sat at the counter. He was on his phone, looking stressed. He had a stack of papers spread out next to his coffee. I don't care what the driver says, he was yelling. The route is inefficient. We're burning fuel sitting in traffic on the I-5 corridor. Figure it out. He hung up and rubbed his temples. I was refilling his coffee. I looked at the papers. It was a logistics map for a freight company. You're routing them through the city center during peak hours, I said. It slipped out. The man looked up. He had piercing blue eyes. Excuse me? Sorry, I said. I see the map. Your drivers are hitting the bottleneck here. I pointed with the coffee pot. If you route them through the secondary bypass, it adds 4 miles to the distance, but the average speed is triple. You save 20 minutes and about 2 gallons of diesel per truck. The man stared at me. Then he looked at the map. He pulled out a pen. Show me. I grabbed a napkin. I drew the bypass. I calculated the fuel load in my head. Also, if you stagger your departure times by 15 minutes, you avoid the queue at the way station. He looked at the napkin. Then he looked at my name tag. Everett. You're a waiter? I'm a dishwasher who pours coffee, I corrected. I'm Conrad, he said. I own Ashford Freight Solutions. How do you know this? I like systems, I said. I see how things flow. Conrad took a sip of his coffee. What are you doing after your shift? Going back to the shelter, I said. I wasn't ashamed anymore. Conrad nodded. He pulled a business card out of his wallet. Be at this address at 8 in the morning tomorrow. Wear a tie. I don't have a degree, I said quickly. My dad said. I didn't ask about your dad. I asked if you could be there at 8 in the morning. That was the moment. The crack in the wall. I showed up. I started in the dispatch room. I absorbed everything. I learned the software, then I improved it. I stayed until midnight every night. I didn't have a family to go home to, so the office became my home. In 2 years, I was the operations manager. In 3 years, I led a buyout of a smaller competitor. In 4 years, I left Ashford Freight Solutions to start my own consultancy, North Star Flow Systems. I didn't do it for the money, though the money came fast. I did it because every time I optimized a route, every time I saved a client $1 million, I felt a little less unknown. I was building a fortress made of success, so high that the rain from Bloomington couldn't touch me anymore. But you can't outrun your ghosts. 5 years. That's 1,825 days. I sat in my office at North Star Flow Systems. The walls were glass. The furniture was minimal and terrifyingly expensive. On the wall behind my desk, I didn't have a diploma. I had a small shadow box frame. Inside it was the plastic hospital bracelet that said, Unknown Male, and the crumpled $20 bill Mom had given me. Every client asked about it. I told them it was modern art. I was reviewing the quarterly projections. We were up 40%. North Star Flow Systems was becoming a respected name in logistics consultancy. I had just closed a major contract with a national retailer. I looked out the window at the skyline. I was safe. I was powerful. But I was alone. I dated, sure. But I never let anyone close. How do you explain to a girl that your parents fired you? That you don't go home for Thanksgiving? That your inheritance was a $20 bill and a complex? My intercom buzzed. It was Dahlia, my HR director. She was a tough woman, former military. Nothing rattled her. Everett, you need to see this resume. I'm busy, Dahlia. Just hire the best candidate for the coordinator position. I think you need to see this one personally, she insisted. Her voice was odd, quieter than usual. She walked in and placed a folder on my desk. I opened it. Name, Preston Whitlock. Address, Bloomington, Indiana. Education, Georgetown. Law, incomplete. Experience, bartender, retail associate, legal intern, 3 months. The world stopped spinning. Preston, my brother, the golden boy, the future. I stared at the photo attached to the ID copy. He looked tired. His hairline was receding. There were bags under his eyes. He didn't look like the smug kid in the window anymore. He looked beaten. He's applying for the junior logistics coordinator role, Dahlia said softly. It's an entry-level job. $45,000 a year. $45,000. I made that in a week. Does he know? I asked. Does he know I own this company? I don't think so, Dahlia said. We rebranded last year, remember? Your name isn't on the logo, and you go by J. Avery on the website. No photo. I leaned back in my chair. My leather chair creaked. Why is he here? I whispered. He's supposed to be a lawyer. He's supposed to be rich. I turned to my computer. I did something unethical. I used my access to premium data brokers, tools we use to vet corporate partners, to look up my own family. The report loaded in seconds. Red text everywhere. Harlan and Celeste Whitlock. Foreclosure proceedings initiated on the Bloomington property. Credit score, 520. Preston Whitlock, $150,000 in student debt. Judgments for unpaid credit cards. No bar association record. They were drowning. The investment had failed. The guaranteed return had crashed. I felt a surge of... Was it joy? Vindication? No, felt like acid. It burned. He's in the lobby, Dahlia said. He flew in for the open interview day. He's been waiting for 2 hours. I looked at the bracelet on the wall. Unknown male. I looked at the resume. Georgetown Law, incomplete. Bring him up, I said. My voice was cold, even to my own ears. Everett, Dahlia warned. If you're going to kill him, do it outside the office. I don't want the paperwork. I'm not going to kill him. I stood up and buttoned my jacket. I walked over to the window. I'm going to interview him. I watched the rain. I thought about the Porsche downstairs. I thought about the hungry kid sleeping behind the dumpster. Send him in. The door opened. I kept my back to him. I pretended to be looking at a file on the credenza. I needed a moment to compose my face. I needed to lock the little brother away and let the CEO take over. Good afternoon, a voice said. It was Preston's voice, but stripped of all its arrogance. It was humble, nervous. Have a seat, I said, keeping my back turned. I heard the chair scrape against the floor. Thank you for seeing me, sir. I know my resume is a bit unconventional for this role. I turned around slowly. I was sitting in the shadow of the high-back chair. The lights in the room were dimmed for the presentation screens. He didn't see me clearly yet. He was looking at his hands, wringing them together. His suit was ill-fitting polyester. Cheap. Unconventional, I said, picking up his resume. That's one word for it. You went to law school. Yes, sir. Well, I completed 2 years. Why did you stop? Financial difficulties, Preston said. He cleared his throat. And I realized the law wasn't for me. Or maybe you just couldn't pass the bar? I pressed. He flinched. I had some personal setbacks. It says here you want to work in logistics. Why? I need a job, he said honestly. I mean, I admire North Star flow systems. I hear you value efficiency. I'm a hard worker. I just need a chance. I'm willing to start at the bottom. The bottom, I echoed. Interesting. My father used to say that some people deserve the future, and some people are just adequate. Preston's head snapped up. He squinted at me. The familiarity of the phrase hit him like a physical blow. Excuse me? I leaned forward into the light. I asked you a question, Preston. What defines a person's worth? Is it their degree? Or is it their ability to survive when they get locked out in the rain? He stared. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at my eyes. Then his gaze drifted to the wall behind me. He saw the frame. He saw the crumpled $20 bill. The color drained from his face. He looked like he was going to vomit. "Everett?" he whispered. It was a sound of pure disbelief. "Hello, Preston," I said. "Welcome to North Star Flow Systems." He stood up, knocking his chair over. You own this." "I built this," I corrected. "Brick by brick. While you were partying at Georgetown on Dad's retirement fund." "I didn't," he stammered. "Everett, we didn't know where you were. Mom cries every Christmas." "Mom cries?" I laughed. It was a harsh sound. "Does she cry into the $20 she paid me to leave?" Preston sank back down, not into the chair, but onto the floor. He looked broken. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "Everett, I'm so sorry. I was a coward. I stood at the window and I watched you walk away, and I didn't do anything because I was scared Dad would cut me off too. And look where that got you." I gestured to his cheap suit. "You played by the rules, Preston. You were the good son. What happened?" "I failed," he admitted. Tears were streaming down his face now. "I failed out. I tried to make money trading crypto to pay Dad back, and I lost it all. They're losing the house, Everett. Dad had a stroke last month from the stress. We have nothing. I came here because I heard they were hiring. I didn't know." The room was silent. I looked at my brother, kneeling on the expensive carpet of my office. This was the moment I had dreamed of for 5 years. The moment of total victory. I had the power. I had the money. I had the upper hand. I could kick him out. I could call security. I could say, "You're not realistic, Preston." But looking at him, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt sad. "Get up," I said. He looked up, wiping his eyes. "Are you going to fire me?" "I haven't hired you yet." I walked over to the shadow box. I took it off the wall. I opened the back and pulled out the bracelet and the bill. I walked over to Preston and held out the $20. "This is all I had," I said. "This and the clothes on my back. And you know what? It was the best thing Mom ever gave me. Because it taught me that nobody is coming to save me." I placed the bill on the table between us. "You want a job?" I asked. He nodded frantically. "I don't hire brothers," I said. "I hire assets. Can you be an asset?" "I'll do anything. I'll sweep the floors." "Good, because you're not going to be a coordinator. You're going to start in the warehouse. Loading docks. Night shift. Minimum wage. No special treatment. If you're late once, you're fired. If you tell anyone who I am, you're fired." Preston looked at me. For the first time in his life, he looked at me with respect. Not love, not pity. Respect. "Thank you," he said. "I won't let you down." "Don't do it for me," I said, turning back to the window. "Do it so you can buy your own damn house." Preston left the office. He walked out different than he walked in. He had a job. It was a grunt job, a job my father would have sneered at, but it was an honest start. I stood alone in the office. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me exhausted. I looked at the empty spot on the wall where the frame used to be. I had won. But the victory wasn't about seeing Preston beg. It wasn't about the power trip. The victory was realizing that I didn't hate them anymore. Hate takes energy. Hate binds you to the person you hate. I didn't feel hate. I felt pity. They were trapped in a cage of their own making. A cage of status and expectations. I was free. I had been free since the moment that door clicked shut 5 years ago. I pressed the intercom. "Dahlia, is there a body to dispose of?" she asked. "No. He starts Monday. Warehouse B. Put him on the standard onboarding track." "You're a better man than me, boss," she said. "No," I said. "I'm just a businessman. He's cheap labor." I lied. It wasn't about business. It was about closing the loop. The drive back to Bloomington wasn't just a journey across state lines. It was a journey backward through time. When I crossed the heavy steel bridge that marked the town limits, My hands tightened on the leather steering wheel of the Porsche until my knuckles turned white. The car, a machine of precision engineering and ungodly cost, felt alien here. The suspension absorbed the potholes of County Road 9 with ease, but I could feel every single one of them in my chest. I hadn't been back in 5 years. Not for a holiday, not for a funeral, not even for a drive-by. I had treated Bloomington like a quarantine zone, a place where the infection of my past lived, and I was the only survivor who had made it out. The town looked smaller. That's the first thing you notice when you grow up and leave. The geography shrinks. The terrifyingly large high school looked like a cramped brick box. The massive downtown square was just 4 blocks of fading businesses. I rolled slowly down Main Street. The cinema was closed, boarded up with plywood that had grayed in the weather. Rosalie's diner was still there, though. I saw the neon sign buzzing in the window. I felt a phantom ache in my hands, remembering the hot water and the steel wool, scrubbing plates until my skin was raw. I almost stopped. I almost went inside to order a coffee and leave a $1,000 tip. But I didn't. I wasn't here for a reunion tour. I was here to bury a ghost. I turned onto Oak Street. The streetlights were just flickering on, casting long, orange shadows against the twilight. My heart began to hammer a rhythm against my ribs that no amount of deep breathing could calm. This was it, the physical location of my trauma. I pulled the car over about 3 houses down from the house at 402 Oak Street. I killed the engine. The silence that rushed into the cabin was deafening. I tinted the windows dark enough that nobody could see in, but I could see out perfectly. There it was, the house. It looked tired. The siding, which I remembered as a crisp, authoritative white, was now a dull, peeling gray. The gutters were clogged with leaves. Dead leaves from last autumn that nobody had bothered to clean. The lawn, which my father used to manicure with the precision of a surgeon, was patchy and overgrown with crabgrass. It was a shock. In my head, my father was a giant, a titan of industry in his own mind, a man who controlled the world with his voice. I expected the house to still look like a fortress. Instead, it looked like a tomb. I sat there for 20 minutes just watching. A light went on in the kitchen. I saw a silhouette move past the window. It was hunched over, slower than I remembered. Then the front door opened. My father, Harlan Whitlock, stepped onto the porch. He was wearing his old work jacket, the one with the grease stain on the pocket that never came out. But he didn't fill it out anymore. He looked shrunken. He moved with a stiff, uneven gait, favoring one side, possibly from the stroke Preston had mentioned. He was carrying a small bag of trash. He walked to the curb, his movements stiff and painful, and dropped the bag in the bin. He stopped and looked down the street. He looked right at my car. I held my breath, but he didn't see me. He saw a gray sports car, a spaceship from a world he didn't belong to, and he looked away. His eyes were dull. There was no fire in them, no judgment, just exhaustion. He looked like a man who had spent 5 years waiting for a ship that never came in. I realized then that the monster under my bed was just an aging man with bad credit and a body weakened by stress. The fear that had driven me for half a decade evaporated, leaving behind a strange, hollow sadness. Then my mother came out. Celeste. She was wiping her hands on a dish towel, a nervous tic she had always had. She said something to Dad. He didn't answer. He just stared at the ground. She reached out and touched his arm. A tentative, fearful gesture. He flinched away, not aggressively, but with the weariness of someone who just didn't want to be touched. She looked so fragile. Her hair, once dyed a fierce auburn, was gray and pulled back in a messy bun. I reached for my phone. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I wanted to distract myself. Maybe I wanted to check my email, to remind myself that I was a CEO, not the shivering kid on the porch. I opened my social media app. Northstar Flow Systems had a massive following now. I usually let the marketing team handle it, but sometimes I checked the comments on our success stories. I clicked on the latest post, a photo of a client's new electric truck fleet that our team had helped redesign. There was a comment at the top. It had been posted 3 minutes ago. User 7492. So proud of this company. Incredible work. I froze. I had seen this user before. User 7492. They had no profile picture, just a default gray avatar. They had 0 followers. They followed only one account, North Star Flow Systems. They liked every post. Every single one. For 5 years. When I announced our expansion into Asia, user 7492 commented, "Wonderful news." When I posted about our charity drive, user 7492 commented, "You have a good heart." I had always assumed it was a bot, or maybe just a lonely retiree. But looking at the timestamp, 3 minutes ago, and looking at my mother standing on the porch, holding her phone in her other hand, I zoomed in on the scene through my windshield. My mother was looking down at her screen. She typed something with one finger. My phone buzzed. A new notification. User 7492. "I hope the CEO is taking care of himself. He works so hard." The air left my lungs. It was her. My mother. The woman who had handed me a wrinkled $20 bill and closed the door. The woman who had chosen her husband's ego over her son's life. She had been watching me. Every day. For 5 years. She knew. She knew I was the CEO. She knew I was Everett. She had to. The timeline matched perfectly. A surge of anger flared up, hot and fast. "If you knew," I thought, gripping the phone, "why didn't you call? Why didn't you message me? Why did you hide behind a fake number and a gray avatar?" Then I looked at her again. I saw the way she glanced at my father, terrified he would see her screen. I understood. She was a hostage. She was a hostage to her own choices, to her own weakness. She loved me in the dark because she was too cowardly to love me in the light. She was proud of me, but she was more afraid of him. "Silence is complicity," I had told Preston. And it was. But seeing it now, it looked less like malice and more like tragedy. I could get out of the car. I could walk up that driveway in my $3,000 suit. I could confront them. I could scream, "I'm here. Look at me. I'm the one you threw away." It would be satisfying for about 5 minutes. And then what? Dad would yell. Or worse, he would beg. Mom would cry. They would ask for money. They would try to pull me back into their drowning ship. They would want to know about Preston. They would want to know about the inheritance they felt they were owed. I looked at the user 7492 comment again. "I hope the CEO is taking care of himself." I tapped the reply button. My thumb hovered over the screen. I typed, "He is. He's doing just fine." I watched my mother. She read the notification. Her hand flew to her mouth. She looked up, scanning the street. Her eyes passed over my tinted windows again. She didn't know it was me in the car, but she knew the message was for her. She lowered the phone and smiled. It was a sad, broken little smile, but it was real. That was enough. I put the car in gear. I didn't want a reunion. I didn't want their apologies. Apologies are just words, and words are cheap. Action is the only currency that matters. I contacted my attorney and asked him to obtain a formal payoff statement from the mortgage servicer. The detailed credit report had identified the lender, but the payment still had to be verified and handled properly. 30 minutes later, he called back. The foreclosure could be stopped if $142,000 was transferred through his client trust account that evening. To me, that was the revenue from a single mid-sized contract. To them, it was the end of the world. I could let them lose the house. It would be poetic justice. The golden child gambled it away, and the failure let it burn. But I remembered the lesson I learned at the diner. Systems over sentiment. If they lost the house, they would move in with Preston. Preston, who was currently working for minimum wage in my warehouse, trying to build a life. If I let them fall, they would crush him. And if they crushed him, I lost a good employee. I authorized the transfer through my attorney's client trust account. Amount: $142,000. Recipient: Bloomington First National Mortgage Servicing. Memo paid in full. Anonymous. I watched the processing wheel spin. Then the green check mark. I didn't do it for them. I did it so I never had to think about them again. I bought their safety so I could buy my freedom. It was a severance package. I released the parking brake. The Porsche purred to life, a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. I drove away slowly. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what was behind me. A house that was no longer a home, and two people who were no longer my parents, just characters in my origin story. I turned the corner, heading toward the one place in this town that actually mattered. The bus station hadn't changed. In a world that was constantly upgrading, renovating, and gentrifying, the Bloomington bus terminal remained a monument to stagnation. The same fluorescent light was flickering overhead, buzzing like a trapped insect. The same smell of diesel and stale urine hung in the air. I parked the Porsche in the shadows of the lot, away from the few wandering souls waiting for the 9 in the evening Greyhound to Indianapolis. I stepped out. The air was cool, but it wasn't raining. The sky was a bruised purple, fading into the black of night. I walked to the bench. The bench. The metal was cold against my hand. I ran my fingers along the edge. I remembered the exact texture of the rust. I remembered how hard the seat was against my spine when I tried to curl up and sleep. I remembered the despair that had felt heavy as lead in my stomach. I sat down. I was wearing a suit that cost more than my father made in 3 months. I had a phone in my pocket that could command a global logistics network. But sitting there, I felt the phantom weight of that wet hoodie. I closed my eyes and let the memory wash over me. The fear, the hunger, the feeling of being discarded like trash. "You made it," I whispered to the ghost of the 18-year-old boy sitting next to me. "You didn't die. You didn't break." I reached into my inner jacket pocket. I pulled out the bill, the $20. It was crisp now, preserved in the frame for so long, but the creases were still there. The deep folds where I had clenched it in my fist. I looked at it one last time. For years, this piece of paper had been my fuel. It was a symbol of everything I lacked, everything I was denied. It was my chip on the shoulder. But a chip on the shoulder is a heavy thing to carry uphill. And I was at the top of the mountain now. I didn't need the weight anymore. I placed the bill on the bench. I weighed it down with a small, smooth stone I found near the curb, so the wind wouldn't blow it away. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was a seed. Maybe someone would find it. Maybe a kid running away from home. Maybe a mother trying to buy a ticket to a safe place. Maybe a junkie needing a fix. It didn't matter. It wasn't mine anymore. "Debt paid," I said aloud. The words felt like a spell breaking. I stood up and walked back to the car. I felt lighter, physically lighter. I sat in the driver's seat, but before I started the engine, I made one phone call. I scrolled past the business contacts, past the lawyers, past the investors. I found a number saved simply as Cormac. I hit dial. It rang 4 times. I was about to hang up, thinking he was on the road, when the line clicked. "Yeah." The voice was raspy, older, but unmistakable. "Cormac," I said. "It's Everett." There was a pause. A long silence filled with the static of a poor connection. "Everett." Cormac's voice softened. "The kid from Interstate 69? "Yeah, the kid from Interstate 69. "Well, I'll be damned. I thought you forgot about me. It's been a long time since we talked." "Something like that," I smiled. "Where are you?" "Stopped at a diner in Ohio. Hauling steel to Pittsburgh." "How are you, kid? You eating?" "I'm eating," I said. "I'm eating good, Cormac. Listen. I'm in Bloomington. The hell you doing back there? You looking for trouble?" "No. I was looking for closure. I found it." "Good," Cormac grunted. "Closure is good. Better than a swift kick in the teeth." "Cormac," I hesitated. "I just wanted to say thank you. For the jacket. For the 20. For stopping. Don't get mushy on me, kid. I'm serious. I just left the 20 on the bench where it all started. I passed it on." I could hear Cormac shifting the phone. I heard the clink of a coffee cup. "You did good, Everett," he said. His voice was thick with emotion he tried to hide. "My boy. He never got to come back. You coming back standing tall. That makes it a little easier. You know?" "I know," I said. "I'm sending you something, Cormac." Check your bank account in the morning. Buy yourself a new transmission, or a new truck, or retire. Everett, you don't have to. I know I don't. That's why I'm doing it. Drive safe, old man. You too, kid. Keep the shiny side up. I hung up. I started the car. The Porsche engine roared to life, a symphony of mechanical perfection. I turned on the headlights. The beams cut through the darkness, illuminating the road ahead. I pulled out of the parking lot. I drove past the Welcome to Bloomington sign. I didn't look at it. I hit the on-ramp for the interstate. I accelerated. The speedometer climbed from 60 to 70, then 80 miles per hour. The world blurred outside my windows. I wasn't driving away from my past anymore. I was driving toward my future, a future that didn't belong to Preston or my parents or the college fund. It was mine. I had built it from scrap parts and grit. I had engineered it. And as the city lights of Bloomington faded into the rearview mirror, disappearing into the vast, dark cornfields of Indiana, I finally understood the truth. They didn't kick me out of the family. They released me. They cut the anchor, thinking I would drown. But they forgot that I knew how to swim. I smiled. I turned up the radio. And I drove into the night. An unknown male no more. Before I go, I want to leave you with this. We grow up thinking that our value is determined by the people who raised us. We think that if our parents don't believe in us, if our family doesn't support us, then we are broken. We spend years, sometimes decades, trying to fix ourselves, trying to earn a love that was never ours to begin with. But here is the hard truth I learned in the rain that night. You cannot buy bread with someone else's approval. My father's rejection was the most painful thing that ever happened to me, but it was also the most necessary. If he had given me that college fund, I would have become a mediocre engineer constantly trying to please him. By kicking me out, he gave me the gift of desperation. He forced me to find my own spine. Self-reliance isn't just about paying your own bills. It's about paying your own emotional debts. It's about looking at the empty seat at the table and realizing you can build your own table. I want to ask you something. Is there a moment in your life where a door was slammed in your face, and it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to you? Or maybe you are standing in the rain right now, holding a wrinkled $20 bill, scared of what comes next. If you took any value from my journey, if you felt the cold of that bench or the warmth of that victory, please do me a favor. Type good in the comments below. It's a small word, but it tells me that we are connected. It tells me that you understand that sometimes you have to lose your family to find yourself. I'm Everett Whitlock. I started with nothing but an unknown bracelet and a refusal to quit. And if I can make it, so can you. Keep building, keep driving, and never let anyone else hold the pen to your story.